Okay, I think we're set up now. So, um, the purpose of this video essentially is to teach you guys how to run a ripped copy of Valheim inside of the Unity editor. Um, why might you want to do this is if you're building mods for the game and you need to debug game behavior. Um, it's pretty much the only reason I could think of. Outside of it's just kind of cool that you can do that. So the tool that we are going to use to accomplish the extraction of the game from its shipped format into something I can open in Unity Editor is a program called Asset Ripper. I'm going to put the link to these programs in the description of the video, so don't worry about having to focus on this. But the version that I am going to download is the GUI version because I don't really want to deal with console commands. And I'm just going to make this in a folder where it's easy for me to see it and locate things. And all I'm doing currently is just extracting the asset ripper zip into a folder where I can use the actual application itself. Alright. So, I don't need to necessarily change exports full methods for mono games, dummies. I hadn't touched any of that before. We're going to open folder, go to my program files, Steam, Steam apps, common, Valheim, select the folder. This particular process takes a second or two to load up. Once it's loaded up, we're going to go to the export selection and click export all files. And then where you export is completely up to you. I'm going to put this on my external hard drive. And then this process does take a few minutes. now that we've got the rip completed, we need to complete a few more steps because our goal is to actually run this game. And when you extract the game with something like Asset Ripper or Utiny Ripper, etc., and all of the scripts only have headers. And what I mean by that is if you go look at these scripts, I've only got declarative fun. Ooh, it looks like he's updated his software. And it actually rips the whole thing now. That's good news for us. Make sure there's no duplicate files, and what I mean by that is during the export, see this file like pool apostrophe 1. Okay, so all these look good. The only other thing that I do is this assembly C# folder is assembly C# is automatically generated by your Unity project, so I move this particular script file into the root. Alright. The other thing that I do is I take this asset ripper folder and I move it one folder down. This is all of the things that the ripper itself either could not rip or had used for source. So we're going to be missing some things like player settings, line render settings, compute shader settings, cloth impact settings, maybe some character joint settings, which is like ragdolls, audio mixers, which I'm going to go over here in a minute. Alright. Okay. And I'm not 1,000% sure if what I'm doing currently is necessary. We'll find out together. Okay. So it looks like Asset Ripper has updated his code to actually dump the full method and contents of your C sharps rather than just the declarative information, you know, things like all of your defines at the top of your file. So that is good news for us. It saves us a complete step in this tutorial. Okay, so as you've noticed, I've opened my Unity Hub, and the reason is because I'm in a position now where I would like to open this ripped copy of Valheim. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now, you'll notice the Asset Ripper already defines the proper version of Unity that I should be using for this. And the first time you open the Unity project will take a little bit of time to load everything. Okay. So it looks like the script export option inside of Asset Ripper did not function as I wished, so we're going to continue with the next portion. Um, the next thing that you're going to need to do is to export all of the assemblies using ILSpy. And the way that you do that is by going to your Valheim location, opening the unstripped core libs, and taking everything from there, dropping it into this window. Oops. And then we want to go to Valheim Data, Managed, take all of our assembly files, and put them in here. And then we're going to set our C# language to C# 7.3 VS 2017.7. Right click these files and click Save Code. I'm going to put these somewhere where I can locate everything. It's in a folder that I have called Assemblies. And basically what you're going to be left with is a folder that looks like this. And what we're going to want to do is delete the properties folder and delete the .csproj file. You're going to repeat this process for every single assembly for the game. So assembly Google, GUI, Lux, post-processing, Simple Mesh, Steamworks, Sunshaft, Utils, Valheim, and the C#. Once you're done with that, you should have folders like this. And we're going to go ahead and take those folders to our scripts folder over here. And I'm just cleaning up those /1 CS files because they will cause issues. Okay. Now let's see what kind of errors we have to clean up. So there are some errors to clean up from exporting these scripts inside of ILSpy. Let's start with the first one, which is inside of assembly utils, utils CS. This is more or less saying that it doesn't know which compression code to use, if it should use the built-in compression code inside of Unity or if it should use Windows compression code. So we need to open this particular file and add a line of text in order to let the compiler know which particular compression level code to use. So in just a second, once the project finishes opening here, we'll do that. Okay. So what that did is up here in my using statements, that says compression level is equal to system.io.compression.compression level, so that anything calling compression level within this code knows which style of compression to use. All right, let's go to our next error. Our next error is inside of terminal.cs, and the error root cause here is that ilspy gave a general name to this variable, so we're going to need to rename this variable in order for Unity to be happy specifically. So I'm going to use the rename function inside of my IDE and just rename this to try parameter int. And the reason I use the rename function is because it renames it everywhere that this integer is called. Okay, so we have one final error to wrap up here, and that's inside of this function. I don't know how to fix this code, and it's not necessarily important for what we are doing. This is to take console commands, and well, we're playing the game in the editor, so it doesn't really matter if I have console commands. I can edit whatever I want. So once we clear up those code issues inside of our files, Unity will then finish importing all of our stuff. All right. Now we have no errors in our Unity Explorer, so we can continue in our next steps. There's a couple of scripts that need editing, specifically heightmap.cs, otherwise you will not be able to open scenes inside of the game rip. So we're going to open heightmap.cs, locate this execute and edit mode tag, and remove it. Save the file. The next edit that we are going to make is in znet. Update and update ban list. You're going to add a null check. And then in check whitelist, we're also going to add a null check. So if permitted list equals null, return. And the reason we do this is because those files don't generate properly in this particular setting. So essentially, I don't really care who's on the ban list or the whitelist, and I don't care if those files exist for this test case. So if those files don't exist, just don't execute the rest of the code and don't worry about throwing a null reference error for it. Those two particular line additions are imperative. If you do not make them, you will not be able to start the game. Alright, the next thing that we need to do is to add the audio mixers. I'm going to upload these as a zip file. I spent a little bit of time setting this up, so these are things that do not rip with the game. I had to manually figure out how they worked and set them up myself. So what this gives you is a main audio mixer with an ambient master, music, SFX, and snapshots that accord to all of them. And you do need to do some things to make this work inside of your RIP. So now let's set up our project before we start manipulating things inside of our project. The first thing that I like to do is go inside of my player and set to linear color space. This will cause your project to reload, but this particular one makes it go very quickly. The next thing that I like to do is to change my .NET release to 4x. I also tell it I can run unsafe code unless if I'm doing mod testing things in here, etc. The next thing that we need to do is to go to our graphics, change our deferred shader to built in. Then we need to scroll up to where it says use HDR and untick this box. Okay, we've got our project all set up here. The next thing we want to do is find our scenes folder. So scenes, take all of these scenes and move them to your assets folder. And we can go ahead and get rid of the scene folder now since it is empty. And the reason we are doing that is because the Valheim code is written to look for these scene files in the root directory of your project, so it's just easier to do it that way. Now, the next thing that we need to do is to set up Steamworks inside of our Unity project. And the way that we do that is by using a pre-packaged Steamworks redistributable. He's got discussion documentation. Yep. Installation, and I will give a link to this. So what we're going to do is just take this link right here, copy it, go to my package manager. We're going to wait for it to load packages because it won't let me click anything until it does that. You see this plus sign in the top left corner? We're going to go ahead and select that. And then we're going to go add a package from get URL, paste the URL that we just had, and let it sit here and think for a minute. Okay, now we've got Steamworks installed. The next thing that we need to do is find the post-processing packages provided by Unity. Some of the scripts that Valheim relies on does use the built-in post-processing, so we want to make sure that we have any supporting content for that. And then the other thing that we are going to want to do is inside of the root of your ripped folder, once you have installed Steamworks, there will now be a file called steamappid.txt. Open it. The default entry is 480. That is for a dummy Steam game that you would put in there like if you're developing things. But we want to use Valheim Steam ID, which is 892970. So I've got my Steam ID assigned to the project. I've got everything set up. I've got my post-processing installed. I've got my Steamworks installed. I removed my execute and edit mode from the heightmap.cs. I should be able to open the start scene now. Alright, now you're going to notice things look real funny. And I've got some red text in my console here, which doesn't make me happy. And most of this stuff has to do with the things that were not able to be imported. So we're going to try and find our main camera. And now that I've located our main camera, I'm going to go ahead and remove the depth of field, the camera effects, the sun shafts, and the post-processing behavior. Now I can at least see my scene. And I know you're probably going, you really can't. What's all this black crap? Why does it look like that? And if you really want to go through and clean it up, you can. we would just need to go here to our GUI and find things that have came from our Valheim shaders that are obviously broken, and replace them with good shaders. Okay. Cool, so now I can at least see my start scene. I'm going to save that. And the next thing I need to do is go into my main scene. And I need to do the exact same thing for my camera. So I got to go find my camera and remove depth of field, remove camera effects, remove sun shafts, and remove post-processing. And then save the scene. Okay, let's open our start scene back up. Now, I should be able to just press play. Give it a second to load. Now, the reason this looks funny is because the fog is using a broken shader. These shaders that come with Asset Ripper are dummy shaders, if you will. So I'm going to go through and just kind of fix a couple of these because it drives me insane. I'm going to fix the smoke too. This is mainly just so that I can see things instead of fighting with these big shader blocks. Alright, so now I'm going to go through here and I'm going to grab one of my characters, and you can see that the character that's automatically selected is Odin Dev. I've got some worlds that I've already created in here, but as you can see, if I wanted to go join a game, my game is working as if it was a real Valheim game. I could go join a server, I could start a game. I'm going to go ahead and join a world. Warning, this process does take some time, so I'm going to speed it up. Alright, and here we are in the game. And I know you're probably sitting here going, man, everything looks really wonky. Yeah, if you want it to look right, you're going to need to go through and edit all the shaders for everything that you want the shaders edited for, and fix up whatever you think doesn't look right. This specifically for me was so that I could do things like debug enemy nav mesh, and understand how that worked, because I can go through here and essentially locate my player in the hierarchy and then find my player in the scene and look at things that are not available to me via the game or via Unity editor. I can look at nav mesh markers, I can look at gizmo markers, I can look at other things that are only specifically available to me inside of Unity editor ever. So that's why I cared about this. I'm not sure if other individuals will find this as interesting, but it's pretty much where I'm at. And I have another copy of the game where I went through and fixed most of the shaders, so it's essentially playable. But I guess if you guys have any questions on how to do this, come find me in the Odin Plus chat room. Yeah, have fun. Good luck.